Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So, China's television is monitoring across 11 states tomorrow that will be conducting rerun elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will conduct those elections for 28 outstanding court-ordered elections distributed across 12 states of the Federation. INEC says the rerun elections will be conducted in a few polling units. Take a look at them. It's comprising of one senatorial district out of 109, 12 federal constituencies out of 360, and 15 state assembly constituencies out of 991. There were 30 of such court-ordered rerun and supplementary rerun elections. Two of those were the rerun election for the Ajaokuta federal constituency and a supplementary rerun election for the Kogi West Senatorial District, which were conducted on the 30th of November 2019. Now listen to how prepared INEC says they are. INEC Chairman's Chief Press Secretary, Mr. Rotimi Oyekomi, spoke earlier to China's television.
Tomorrow we are going to have rerun elections in 28 constituencies across 11 states, and all arrangements have been made. The ad hoc staff have been trained. We've had consultations with security agencies that have assured us that they will provide adequate security to ensure conducive elections in all the 11 states. Our national commissioners, some of them are out already. They will supervise the proceedings in those states where we have quite a high number of polling units involved. The smart card readers have been configured. The sensitive materials have been delivered, and all issues have been resolved. And we hope that the political actors will play by the rules and not disrupt the elections. There will be no room for substitution at this time. The deadline for substitution is over. We have on paper all the candidates of all the political parties for the elections, and that's what we are proceeding with.
Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, on the side of preparations and security, IGP Adamu, has ordered a comprehensive security arrangement for all INEC offices and facilities in the affected 11 states across the country. The Inspector General of Police says the police personnel deployed for the elections will be professional and apolitical in their discharge of their responsibilities. It therefore enjoins politicians and candidates standing for the elections, as well as the electorate, to ensure strict conformity to the rule of law. We're talking about Nigeria's election. One man, a former presidential candidate of the YPP and a former deputy governor of the central bank, Professor Kingsley Moghalu, is asking for an urgent reforms of Nigeria's electoral process. In a statement, Professor Moghalu says he's leading a group called To Build a Nation, TBAN, and is spearheading a non-partisan citizens campaign for 1 million signatures to petition the National Assembly for fundamental electoral reform in Nigeria. Professor Kingsley Moghalu joins us from Washington, D.C. It will lead us to break, but in 20 seconds, if you may, because we need to take our traditional break, in 20 seconds, give us an understanding of how urgent there is a need for reforms in our electoral process. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, electoral reforms are very fundamental if we are to have a real democracy in Nigeria. Right now, we don't. So what we have is a process that appears to be democratic, but it's not, because the votes don't count. It's those who count the votes who actually count. And citizens are not informed. There's a lot of rigging of elections. There's a lot of violence. And so we should stop pretending that we're running a democracy. And we need to improve our electoral process if our democracy is to be worthy of its name. So it's a very, very urgent agenda. And that's why we're launching this campaign for 100,000 petitions to the National Assembly.
When you say we do not operate a democracy, what then are we practicing in Nigeria?
We're practicing an electocracy, or possibly a selectocracy. It has the appearance of a democracy because there is a process of voting. But the fact is that that process is open to so many manipulations. It's not a transparent process. Registration is an obstacle course. So this whole lack of transparency has to be fixed if our democracy is actually to take us to where we think it should. The people need to be empowered. Right now, democracy in Nigeria is not, it's not a process that is driven by the people, for the people, or of the people. So it's the politicians that are driving the process. So we need to make the electoral process in Nigeria fundamentally electronic and digital so that it's transparent. The registration of voters, the collation of votes, the transmission of votes cast, all these things need to be digital and electronic processes. And it's possible to do it and to prevent rigging in the process.
Apologies, Prof. Let me butt in quickly. When you are saying that our elections should be digital, if you ask Germany, if you ask France, if you ask the United Kingdom, if you ask the United States, they will tell you about their fears about making their electoral process totally electronic. You heard what happened in the 2016 elections in the United States and the allegations against Russia over meddling in their elections. And you want us to go into electronic voting? Is that the right way?
It's electronic and digital voting. Let me explain what I mean. Now, first of all, the process we have in Nigeria is far worse than anything that obtains in the United States or in Germany or in France. So let's get that straight. It's not a standard that any civilized people can aspire to and call it democracy. So let's get that straight. Second, what I mean by electronic and digital voting is that it can be protected with a technology called blockchain. These things are new technologies, and it comes after the system they have had even in most of the Western countries. It's being tried out in a number of places in the world today. And by blockchain technology, we mean a system that connects servers across the country in such a way that there can be no manipulation of the electoral process without it being obvious and being obvious where it's coming from. So that makes it almost foolproof. That's what I mean by digital.
Another question begging for answer. Apologies again, because I have so many questions. I have just little time. Another question begging for answer is the broadband penetration in Nigeria. How many areas in the rural areas that are covered by broadband or by, in fact, GSM?
Yes, that's a very, very proper concern. To build a nation, T-BAN, our nonpartisan citizens movement is calling for the introduction or the systematization of this type of voting by 2027. But we can run a pilot by 2023. We are also calling for diaspora voting. Nigerians who live abroad and are qualified to vote should be able to vote. As in the countries you mentioned, their citizens who live abroad vote. Nigerians who live abroad should not be disenfranchised because they live abroad. Even Ghana has now started diaspora voting. So we're realistic. And we believe that if we start now, by 2027, it's possible to completely transform Nigeria's electoral system. And we're calling on the
How do you
National
hope to
Assembly.
do this, Professor? You ran for election in 2019.
Yes.
A lot of people will think maybe from your experience you were frustrated out of the process because maybe what you thought was not what you met. Is that the situation? Were you frustrated at that election?
I wouldn't say frustrated. I would say that I learned lessons from it. And one of the lessons I learned is that it doesn't really matter what political party you belong to. The fundamental problem is that the electoral system, what we call a democracy, is not working. And that has so many dimensions, including reforming the finance laws concerning elections and so on. So it's the lessons that I have learned. So
when you're asking for these reforms, Professor, apologies again, when you're asking for these reforms, first and foremost, are you going to contest the election in 2023? Because you said you resigned from YPP in October.
Yes, I did. I resigned in order to lend my energy in a non-partisan way across all political parties or none at all to this fundamental problem that we should fix the electoral system in our country. That's the first job. Now, if you ask whether or not I'm going to contest in 2023, I have not made any decisions about my political future at this time. Right now, I'm operating on a non-partisan platform addressing the needs of Nigeria's citizens, not Kingsley Moghalu's own needs or ambitions or aspirations. That's what I'm focused on.
For example,
Nigeria,
Professor, let me put you on the hot seat. For example, if you're offered the job of the INEC chairman, would you take it?
You know, there's no need to engage in all these hypotheticals.
No.
So
the question is,
not...
because you have this idea of how our electoral process should be, and in that sense, if you want change, you probably should be at the driver's seat to make sure that this change happens. And that's why I'm asking a hypothetical question.
There are many ways to drive change, such as what T-Ban is doing now. This is one way of driving change. We are mobilizing our citizens to come out and demand of the National Assembly to change the legal framework. That's the first order of business. After that, we can go into whether you want to be INEC chairman or not. Being an INEC chairman in the current system is a recipe for frustration.
Professor, we need to go now, but let me ask you, and I'd like you to answer in 20 seconds, if you may. Do you think that there is a political will to drive these change in the electoral process within this political class or climate that we belong? 20 seconds, please.
Excellent question. But we should not leave that to the political class to determine. The citizens of Nigeria need to become involved in shaping their own future. We should not surrender our future and our destiny to the politicians who, bestride the environment today. The citizens should come out, they should campaign, they should petition, they should march. That's what matters. It doesn't matter whether the politicians want or not, whether they want it or not. But if the citizens learn that they themselves have the power to change things, then let's use that power. That's what this exercise is about. Kingsley
Moghalu, an economist, a lawyer, former deputy governor of the CBN, former presidential candidate, YPP in 2019 elections, and the convener of To Build a Nation. Thank you so much for talking to us. Is there in Washington, D.C. But that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. It's Friday. I guess you figured out how you're going to spend your weekend. But I'm going to spend mine in a wonderful way. Enjoy the rest of your evening.